All right, guess who's back fresh off the honeymoon in Mexico, and I am hyped. There's a lot to talk about, and you guys are going to see a lot of videos come out the next couple days. But today, we got to focus on the offensive line for the Oklahoma Sooners and what has happened in the transfer portal, and additionally, what's going on the recruiting trail. Because I know you guys have questions. It's something that you guys have put down in the comments below, so it's something we're going to talk about in deep dive. I do want you guys to know that I am following up with Casey Poe, and I am also following up with Bennett Warren. So we should have a little bit more information on those fronts here in the next couple of days. I believe we are going to end up doing an interview with Bennett Warren himself. I'm recording this on Friday night, and it's going to be Saturday or Sunday. So keep an eye out for that interview with Bennett Warren next week, because we're going to talk about all those all those official visits that have been wrapped up and kind of where his mind's at, and maybe see if we can figure out if he's an Oklahoma lean. But guys, before we talk about it, go ahead, jump down in the comments below. Let me know what y'all's thoughts are. Are you worried about the offensive line, or do you trust Bill Beatenbow and Jeff Lebby to get the job done on the offensive line, whether it's in the transfer portal or in the recruiting class? And so I think the appropriate place to start this week is going to be with the former four-star offensive tackle that entered the transfer portal for Oklahoma, but then withdrew his name from the transfer portal, Aaryn Parks. Now, for those of you who have followed recruiting for a while, you understand that Aaryn Parks was a pretty nice piece to that 2020 recruiting class that Lincoln Riley, yes, we're going to call him by his real name, Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma put up in 2020, landing the number 13 overall class, where they landed two top 100 offensive line guys in Nate Anderson and Andrew Rame. And Andrew Rame is a guy that, well, he's heading into his senior season. You expect Andrew Rame to go out there and be potentially a first 3-round pick. And then additionally in that draft, or additionally in that class, you had Anton Harrison, who, well, went to the draft. You had Aaryn Parks. So, yes, the offensive line for Oklahoma, you're starting to really see a lot of that success really make its way for Oklahoma into the league. And I think this year you'll see that trend continue as well. But Aaryn Parks, the 6'4", 300, and I think he's at 30 pounds, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. You have to fact check me on that one. I believe he entered the transfer portal. He's withdrawn his name, which is big for Oklahoma, because in a position group where you honestly cannot lose guys right now, and where honestly, if you can get guys, like, you need to get those bodies, this was important for Oklahoma to be able to retain Parks and keep him here, where Parks basically said he's chasing a national championship and he is wanting to return. So that tells you what the mentality is in the locker room for the Oklahoma Sooners. But here's the other thing. Aaryn Parks in the lineup in 2022, thank you to Sooners Wire for putting this out there, because usually it's hard to find this information. Listen, he played 107 snaps along the offensive line in 2022. And in the Cheez-It Bowl loss to Florida State, he played 87 snaps, filling in for Jacob Sexton, who was injured just after 3 snaps. So, yes, he is going to be a crucial piece for Oklahoma, a tenured piece, an experienced piece for Oklahoma, and a guy that you expect that maybe could see the field a couple times in a rotational situation, because, listen, it's the offensive line. Guys get hurt no matter how much we don't want them to get hurt. It just happens, right? With those big bodies going up against other big bodies, it just happens. So Aaryn Parks is going to be a guy that I definitely expect to see getting playing time this year. God forbid those injuries, but it was great for Oklahoma to be able to retain him out of the transfer portal. But that kind of leads to the question of what's Oklahoma going to do in the recruiting class of 2024, because right now all you have for the offensive line is Isaiah Autry. And I know a lot of you guys are asking yourselves, should we start being worried about the offensive line for Oklahoma? And I'm actually going to tell you no, and here's why. Because Oklahoma has put themselves in position for a lot of really good offensive linemen and offensive tackles in this class. They really have. When you look at the offensive tackles, they've got themselves in position for Grant Bricks. When you hear Parker Thune and Brandon Drum talk about them with over at Rivals, you hear them talk about Grant Bricks potentially being one of the best offensive tackles in this class. Oklahoma is positioned to potentially win that kid. And I'm going to trust Parker on this one, that Oklahoma probably wins Bricks. And I know he'll have more information coming out about Bricks because he's going up there to visit him. So keep an eye out for that one. But they've also positioned themselves well for Bennett Warren. Now, there's also been some luck with Warren because, well, Michigan's kind of filling up on the offensive line room. You had Oregon fill up on the offensive tackle side. So really, there's 3 schools that I think Bennett Warren's really looking at right now. And it's Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M, kind of maybe in that pecking order. And like I said, we'll find out a little bit more about Bennett Warren as we have him on the podcast. We kind of deep dive into his recruitment, deep dive into those official visits, because he just wrapped up his official visits with the last one to Tennessee. And guys, I don't expect A&M to be the pick, but if it comes down to Oklahoma and A&M, you never know. A&M has, listen, they've broken Oklahoma fans' heart before, but if Oklahoma can go out there and let's say land a Bricks and you land a Bennett Warren on the offensive tackle side, you're feeling really good about that, right? You're feeling really good about the offensive tackles. Now, other guys that Oklahoma's in for that aren't really talked about a whole lot is Fox Crater out of Vancouver, Washington, a guy that is committed to the University of Oregon. He's taken an official visit to Oklahoma and a couple other places, so it doesn't seem like he's fully all in with Oregon, so we have to keep an eye on that one. And hey, if you get Fox Crater, maybe Bennett Warren slides into Oregon, depending on what Fox Crater decides to do. But then additionally, you've got Marquise Easley, the 6'5.5" offensive tackle out of Kanaki, Illinois. I think I said that right. If I didn't, you guys will jump on me on that one. But really, that seemed like it's going to come down to be a Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Oklahoma battle. So again, if you're Oklahoma, you're going up against the best of the best for these offensive linemen. And listen, I will tell you this. Josh Heupel out at Tennessee is putting together compelling pitches. I have talked to a little over 3 recruits this past 2 weeks that have told me Josh Heupel at Tennessee is doing something different on the recruiting trail, and his recruiting pitch is definitely intriguing to a lot of these players. So you look at the offensive tackle class, likely going to be Bennett Warren and Grant Bricks. I don't think Marcus Easley is the take at this moment, just because I think he's going to be more of a Georgia or an Alabama lean, but that's one that you could potentially keep your eyes out on. Maybe if Oklahoma really does lose Bennett Warren, maybe they push a little bit harder for Easley to end up with Oklahoma. But then you look at the inside offensive linemen. And this is where I think people are panicking a little too much. Because of the news that Casey Poe is leaning to Alabama with the Steve Wiltfong crystal ball, I know a lot of you guys are kind of shocked, and I don't understand why, because I know a lot of you guys watch my podcast, and I know you guys have seen both interviews that we've done with Casey Poe, where he's talked about family members literally playing under Bear Bryant, and how cool it would be to continue that legacy to play for the next greatest Alabama coach, or one of the greatest coaches in NCAA history. So yes, there are ties there with Casey Poe that potentially draw him to Alabama. And yes, I mean, Oklahoma probably has mistakenly been the leader here for a long time. I say mistakenly might be the wrong word, but Casey Poe, I believe, was believed to have shifted to Oklahoma for the longest time, and the Alabama recruitment has kind of sneakily come up on a lot of people. Listen, if Casey Poe ends up at Alabama, he's going to have a great, career there. He's going to get into the NFL just like he would if he came to Alabama, right? So, or Oklahoma. So really for him, it's just going to come down to, what feels the most comfortable and where does he have the best relationships? And honestly, Alabama, they might be the play there. But if you're Oklahoma, you're really in a good position for a couple other inside offensive linemen. And this is why I tell you guys not to worry, because you're in for an offensive lineman, a 6'5", 260-pound kid out of Massachusetts, and Liam Andrews. Yes, a name you guys have probably forgotten about. But then also you're in for the 335-pound offensive lineman out of Tampa, Florida, Eddie Pierre-Louis, who, well, you're probably in a battle with UCF, but if you're Oklahoma, you should be able to come out on top of UCF in that battle. And then you've also got a guy by name of, Eugene Brooks out of Chatsworth, California. So when I look at this inside offensive line, it's definitely something that I'm not necessarily worried about. You even heard Parker throw out the idea that Oklahoma tries to get in there with Jordan Seaton. So let's play this a little bit, right? Let's say David Stone, he commits in July. And all of a sudden, he calls up Jordan Seaton, his teammate at IMG Academy, and says, hey, man, I know you really haven't really been looking at your recruitment with Oklahoma, but I think you should come out here. I want you to come out. I want to host you on an official visit. I want to be out there with you, and let's try to get you out here to Oklahoma. That's a possibility. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying that's what David Stone's going to do, but something we got to keep an eye on. Jordan Seaton at IMG Academy, the 6'5", 287-pound inside offensive lineman, the number 1 in his position and the number 43 overall ranked player. Definitely will be a 5-star by the end of the cycle. That's one that a lot of OU fans really need to be paying attention to. So, yes, there's not really room for concern with the offensive line in terms of the recruiting class yet. Now, if Oklahoma strikes out on 3 or 4 of those guys, yeah, maybe I'm starting to become a little bit more concerned about what Oklahoma is going to do there. So, yeah, that's kind of it. That's what my thoughts are on the offensive line. Definitely think Oklahoma will take guys in the transfer portal, and I know there will be guys in the transfer portal, and Bill Bedenbaugh does his best work there. So, guys, I want to hear from you. Go ahead, jump down in the comments below, and let me know what y'all's thoughts are. What do you guys think about this offensive line, and do you think there is room to be concerned about Oklahoma and Bill Bedenbaugh with the offensive line?